A couple months ago, I realized that I had almost fully lost my ability to work in pencil. As I progressed through school, I started to use paper and pencil less, therefore not practicing those skills. I was really convinced that I would be someone who could magically retain all of my artistic skills as I grew older, even if I didn't practice them, but obviously that's not true, and that's not the case for me. What happened, however, was I was experiencing the ways in which I had lost my capabilities. It was disarming, and it wasn't great to feel like I had lost something I had grown up with. It's not fun to learn that you're not as good at something as you used to be, for no real reason, but that you didn't practice it. I know it's a really common thing to lose skills over time, but it was so shocking. I felt sort of lost. As a child, I had started with pencil and paper as pretty much everyone else does, but now as an adult, I had lost a lot of these skills simply because I didn't practice them. So I decided to start making a series on TikTok where I would draw full sketchbook drawings at least once a week. There were no real parameters to this, and I admit that I have missed a week more than once. With that said, though, I've really been trying to use this as a way to relearn the basics of pencil drawing. While I was making vertical videos primarily for TikTok, I realized that I could also try to venture into the YouTube world, and I started periodically posting YouTube shorts. I haven't been very good at it, but I'm really thankful for all of the people who have subscribed to me here since December. While posting on YouTube, I also started reviving those childish dreams of becoming an art YouTuber and posting speed paints. I really overestimated my capabilities of being able to create a fully polished speed paint every single week, especially since I'm in my last semester and therefore busiest semester of college. So obviously I immediately failed at posting weekly. However, it has been on my mind to try and post videos if I can, even if it's not a regular posting schedule. So I decided to combine these two interests. My weekly drawings could coincide with my desire to post on YouTube more frequently. So with this being said, I'm going to try to post my drawing videos here instead of TikTok, perhaps once a week, but I can't make any promises, and I do think it might take longer than that simply because I'm not very good at editing videos. Okay, enough of that, and now onto the drawing itself. Like I said, I'm really going back to the basics of learning how to draw, which means I'm primarily focusing on shapes and forms within observational drawing. Using a photograph of the apple, I'm really just trying to focus on basic shading and light reflections on it. To be perfectly honest, I was never particularly good at getting my shading to be very smooth. I believe that even in my golden era of pencil drawing, I always had a certain level of streakiness to my pieces. I would typically use a blending stump, but it meant I never really learned the ability to have a very smooth transition between light and dark with my pencils. I'm really hoping that now, at this point, I'll be able to achieve that, but I was really struggling with this drawing. So initially with this drawing, I was using a mechanical pencil just to map out everything, but I don't want to use that for shading because it's a bit too hard to actually shade smoothly. This lead holder has a B in it, a B lead, and I am using it because it's thicker and it's soft, enough that I can put down my basic shadings and still be able to blend them out later. And very quickly I'm going to move on to using a 4B pencil. That's because it's a lot softer. I skip over 2B because 2B is just a normal pencil and it doesn't really get that dark, but I really want to get into more dark areas. So using this 4B pencil, I am taking the very darkest areas of the apple and making them very clear. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty tempting to just sort of get back into using a 6B pencil immediately rather than building it up, but I know 6B pencils are way too soft and they make everything way too dark, and I didn't want to run into my darks so quickly where I could not pull back from it. So instead, I spent a long time layering with this 4B pencil, and I was trying to be careful. This drawing only took about 20 minutes in total, and that's because I didn't want to spend hours on it, otherwise that would not be productive. But what did happen was I spent at least 5 minutes just layering over the same areas with a 4B pencil, if not longer. What I really like about 4B pencils is they're a medium level of softness. All B level pencils are going to be on the softer side when compared to H pencils, but if we are really just comparing the B pencils, 4B sits right in the center. Everyone has used a 2B pencil in school. It's your typical yellow Ticonderoga pencil, but it's not actually good at getting dark quickly. If you are layering plenty, you'll get there, but otherwise it's a bit slow. On the other hand, 6B or 8B pencils get dark very quickly, but they also break really easily and are a bit too soft for initial shading. And besides, you can't really erase 6B or 8B marks completely. There's always going to be some streakiness with your erasing marks, or there will be some leftover graphite. I feel like 4B pencils hit that sweet spot where you're able to layer a lot without actually sacrificing your paper space. When I am layering with a 4B pencil, I still have a lot of work to do before I fully cover the paper. You can always see little white spots from the paper, but it's not exactly causing me issues there. And now I'm finally using a fully graphite pencil with 6B, and I'm layering in those very darkest parts. At this point I sort of realized that I should be blending using a blending stump. I'm not particularly good at making these shades come together, and I can't rely on my own capabilities to blend things out smoothly. At this point, I'm really just focusing on those very dark areas and trying to bring the shape out a little more. Apples tend to have some level of curve to them, and so you can see the curve in your pencil lines if you are maneuvering them correctly. And now it's time for my beloved and very old blending stump. I used this a lot with vine charcoal specifically, so I was a little worried that some of that vine charcoal would blend off into the paper itself, but I think it's been on there long enough that it's not actually posing an issue. And so with that, I am starting at my darkest areas and blending those out because that's where the majority of the streakiness is. My blending has its own set of issues. I'm not particularly patient or very good at making sure everything fits together. You can tell that even with pencil work and not blending work, but you know, it really shows up when I try blending these things together. You can see that I've really left alone this left side, and now I'm going in and erasing part of the light on the right side because there's a rim lighting and there's a bounce light that I sort of tried keeping but wasn't doing a great job with once I started blending. And I'm trying to keep a lot of that bounce light or that direct light on the left side of the apple clear because I don't want to overdo my shading or overdo my lighting in any way, and the best way to do that is to just leave it alone instead of having to go back in and erase later. I think as compared to paint, pencils are a lot of working light to dark and not working dark to light. When I'm painting, which is my primary medium, I'm working a lot with my darks and then bringing out my lights. And that's because I have a lot of layering capability and I typically make my underpaintings very detailed, but I think pencils have a lot less room for redoing than oil paints do. I honestly think if I'd left the apple here, I might have been at a very good spot for finishing, but instead I really wanted to try to make things very smooth and try to emphasize detail on the apple itself, and so I kept working. Watching my video playback, it looks really good from this angle, but honestly, I think when you look at it up close, it's not a very good drawing, actually. I'm not going to show that because I might as well show you what it looks like when it looks nice, but you know, it's not exactly a great piece of artwork. A lot of my painting techniques are trying to burst out here in the way I'm doing this. It's really trying to blend things together and trying to smoothen things out even while retaining texture, and so that's all something I typically do when I'm painting or when I'm making digital art, and that's not really easy to do with pencils. You know, I think each type of medium has its own level of forgiveness. When you're working digitally, obviously there's an undo button, but there's also the ability to change the brush you're using, and that means you can change the brush settings. When I'm working with oils, I have the ability to wipe away my paint and leave the dry paint behind or the raw canvas there, and I can make edits then. Or I can just wait for everything to dry and completely paint over, like I can completely restart my painting. Paper is super delicate and you have to be careful with how much pressure you apply, and you have to layer things, otherwise you won't really get the view you want to, and I'm not sure I'm really that good at it or that good at giving advice about it, but I'm going to keep trying to make these videos and I hope to see you guys next week. I'm gonna let the rest of the video play out at a higher speed and hopefully that won't be too boring for all of you.